The first time I saw her outside the clinic, she was standing in line at the same cafe I always went to after sessions, the one with the chip tables and jazz that never quite matched the hour. She didn't see me at first. Her hair was tied up differently, and she wore a loose beige coat, sleeves pushed halfway up, like she'd given up trying to look composed. I almost turned around. Seeing your therapist outside the office feels wrong, like walking into a dream with the lights on. But she looked over her shoulder, caught my eye, and smiled, not the professional kind, just tired. Human. Coffee addiction, she said. I laughed softly. Occupational hazard. She nodded. Mine too. For a moment, it felt like we were just two strangers hiding from something ordinary, emails, errands, silence. Then she added, half to herself, they never tell you therapy drains both sides. I didn't know what to say, so I watched the steam curl from her cup. Her hands were small, the kind that fidget when someone's thinking too hard. She noticed me noticing and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, pretending to check her phone. We ended up sitting at different tables, close enough to pretend we weren't aware of each other. Every few minutes, she'd glance toward the window, or maybe at her reflection in it. I couldn't tell. When I finished my drink, she was still there, staring at the foam that had long gone cold. Before I left, I heard her whisper quietly, "You don't have to keep pretending you're fine, you know." It wasn't meant for me. Probably something she said to 100 people a week. Still, it followed me home. I didn't see her again for a few days. My apartment felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that hums around you like a question you're avoiding. My phone had unsent drafts, one to a friend I hadn't talked to in months, another to her. Just her first name, typed out, then deleted. When our next session came, she was back behind her desk, same calm tone, same neutral cardigan. Except something in her eyes looked unsettled. "You seem distracted today," she said. "So do you." Her lips curved slightly. Touché. We didn't talk much after that. She let the silence stretch until it almost broke. Then she asked, "Have you been writing again?" I shook my head. "Can't focus." She tilted her head. "Maybe you're not supposed to yet." Her words lingered, not advice, more like permission. For the first time in weeks, I didn't rush out when the clock hit the hour. She walked me to the door, fingers brushing the edge of her notebook. "Try not to think too much," she said. "Sometimes reflection becomes a hiding place." Outside, it had started raining, soft, uneven drops tapping on the glass. I stood there a moment, watching her silhouette move through the frosted window. She looked smaller than I remembered. I almost texted her later that night, just to say thanks. But before I could, a message came through first. "If you ever see me outside work again, let's just pretend we don't know each other." No greeting. No sign-off. Just that. I stared at it until the words blurred. Then, almost without thinking, I replied, "What if I already did?" Her typing bubble appeared. Then disappeared. The next morning, she didn't show up for our session. She came back a week later, no explanation, just a brief text, "Apologies for last time. We can continue if you're still comfortable." Comfortable. I wasn't sure that word applied to anything between us anymore. When she opened the office door, something had shifted. Her hair was down, not intentional, just unguarded. She smiled like someone who'd spent the whole morning rehearsing how not to. "I owe you an apology," she said. "You don't." She hesitated. "Maybe not. But I left without saying goodbye. That's not something I do often." I sat down across from her, trying not to look at her hands. They rested on a mug of tea, fingers tightening slightly as she spoke. Rough week? I asked. She gave a soft laugh, not amused, more like she'd forgotten how. You could say that. My ex-husband decided to reconnect. Usually means he's run out of people to impress. Her voice thinned at the edges, like it was holding too much. Then, almost abruptly, she asked, and you? Still writing nothing? Still trying to? She nodded slowly. Sometimes silence has a reason. Sometimes it's just fear dressed up as patience. I looked at her, really looked. The fine lines near her eyes, the way her sleeve kept slipping down, how she'd forgotten to wear her ring. I wondered when she'd stop missing it. There was a clock ticking behind her, faint but insistent. She must have noticed me glancing because she smiled again, quieter this time. I used to hate that sound, she said. But now it reminds me time's still moving, even when I'm not. Something in that sentence stayed with me, like a small confession pretending to be casual. Later, as I was leaving, she walked me out again. The hallway light flickered, the same way it always did, and we both looked up at it at the same time. A brief, ridiculous synchronicity that made her laugh under her breath. Guess we're both creatures of habit, I said. I hope not, she murmured. Habits are just ways to avoid change. She reached for the switch, brushing my sleeve. The touch was nothing, just skin, barely contact, but it startled me anyway. She noticed. Her hand lingered for a half-second too long, then dropped. Sorry, she said quickly. It's fine. But it wasn't. It felt like the room had taken a breath it didn't know how to release. She looked down at the mug she was still holding, though it was empty now. I used to drink tea with my mother every night before bed, she said suddenly. Even when we didn't have anything to say. I think that's why I still make it, it fills the silence. She looked at me then, and for once, she didn't hide behind the professional tone. I don't know why I just told you that, she said. Maybe because you needed to. Her smile barely moved. Or maybe because you remind me of quiet things. I don't know why that moment stayed with me, maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. Or maybe because she wasn't supposed to. It was raining again, the kind that doesn't fall, just lingers in the air like an afterthought. Our sessions had quietly shifted. Less about me. More about pauses. That morning, she made tea for both of us. No notebook. No formal tone. Just the sound of water hitting porcelain, the faint hum of the radiator. I've been thinking, she said, not looking at me, maybe we should adjust our schedule. Am I, too much work? I meant it as a joke, but my voice cracked. Her eyes lifted. No. Just, too familiar. That word, familiar, caught somewhere in my chest. She sat down across from me, tucking her legs beneath her chair like she needed to shrink the space between us and still couldn't. Her hair was damp at the ends, a few strands sticking to her cheek. I wanted to reach out. I didn't. People get attached in therapy, she said softly. It happens. Are you saying you're attached? A pause. Then a faint, almost amused smile. I'm saying I should be more careful. The clock ticked too loud again. I tried to listen, but every sound felt personal, her breath, the scrape of her ring against the cup, the faint tremor in her voice when she said my name. She asked about my week. I told her about missing calls, eating alone, writing a single line and deleting it. She didn't interrupt. Just watched me, like she was tracing something invisible on my face. Sometimes, she said finally, you look like you're waiting for something to start. Maybe I am. Her gaze didn't move. Be careful what you start. The door opened then, a small click, the sound of someone clearing their throat. Another therapist, older, carrying a file. He froze when he saw us. Didn't realize this room was still in use, he said, too casually. She smiled, professional again. We're almost done. When he left, the silence was heavier. She exhaled slowly, the kind that sounds like a quiet apology. We should end early today, she said, standing. I stayed seated. Because of him? Because of us, she said. I helped her gather papers into a folder. Our fingers brushed once, deliberate by accident. She didn't pull away this time. Neither did I. The air felt charged, brittle. Her eyes lifted, that soft, uncertain distance between want and refusal. She opened her mouth, then stopped. She didn't finish. Just looked at me, waiting for a choice neither of us was ready to name. Outside, thunder murmured somewhere far off, low and constant. If I'd leaned forward, just a breath, we would have crossed it. Instead, I stepped back. She blinked once, like coming out of a dream. Next week, she whispered. But we both knew something had already changed. She suggested we meet outside the office. Just a walk, she said, voice light but guarded. Neutral ground. I didn't ask why. Maybe I was afraid she'd tell me. We met at the small park behind the library, the one with too many benches and not enough people. The air smelled like cut grass and rain. She wore a long gray coat, sleeves folded once at the wrist, like she'd thought too hard about looking casual. We walked without speaking for a while. She kept her hands in her pockets. I kept mine clenched. How've you been? She asked finally. Trying to write again. That's good. It isn't. She smiled faintly, eyes on the path. You're hard on yourself. I wanted to tell her she was the reason I'd started again, that every line I wrote sounded like her voice, every pause her silence. But the words felt dangerous, like stepping too close to the edge of something fragile. We sat down on a damp bench. The wood left faint marks on her coat. She didn't seem to care. I shouldn't have texted you, she said quietly. That night. I crossed a line. So did I. She looked at me then, really looked, no shield, no distance. The kind of look that doesn't belong in daylight. You're young, she said. You'll move past this. I don't think I want to. Her breath caught, just enough for me to notice. Then she shook her head, smiling sadly. You think this is romantic? It isn't. Then what is it? She didn't answer. A group of kids ran past, shouting, kicking up gravel. The world kept moving around us while we sat still, pretending we hadn't already fallen out of step. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, staring at her hands. When I was your age, I fell in love with someone I couldn't have. A teacher. It ruined years of my life. I promised myself I'd never be on the other side of that story. Her voice trembled, just once, before she steadied it again. And yet here we are. I swallowed hard. So, what now? She exhaled slowly, eyes closing as if she could will the moment into something less true. Now. I keep my promise. We sat there for a long time. The air cooled, the light shifted. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket. She didn't look. When she finally stood, she brushed the damp from her coat, avoiding my eyes. You'll thank me someday, she said softly. I wanted to ask, for what? But she was already turning away. A few steps later, she stopped, hand tightening on the strap of her bag. Do you ever wish you could unknow someone? She asked without facing me. I didn't answer. Because she already knew. 2 weeks passed before I saw her again. Not at the park, not at the cafe. Not even at the clinic. Her number still sat in my phone, last text unread, like a door half open and never entered. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. On the third week, I got an email, short, formal, typed like it was meant for anyone but me. Taking a temporary leave. Personal reasons. I'll refer you to another therapist if you'd like. No greeting. No goodbye. I reread it until the screen dimmed. Days bled together. I stopped writing again. My notebook became a list of half-started sentences. If only, maybe someday, she would have said, all abandoned before meaning arrived. Then, one evening, I saw her again. Not in the office. Not in daylight. At the grocery store. She was with someone, a boy, maybe 17. Same gray eyes, same quiet mouth. He was teasing her about something, and she was laughing, the kind of laugh that breaks through all her practiced calm. Her son. I hadn't known she had one. They walked past me, her hand brushing his shoulder lightly, familiar, easy. And then, just before turning down the next aisle, she saw me. The smile froze. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she gave the smallest shake of her head, not rejection, just a plea for distance. I nodded. Looked away. Pretended to compare cereal boxes until she was gone. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at my phone. Every version of a message sat in drafts. Good to see you. You look happy. Was that your son? None of them felt right. Too invasive. Too small. Too late. Instead, I opened the email again. Her words, personal reasons, took on a new shape. Was I one of them? The next morning, I went to the cafe again. Same jazz, same chipped tables. She wasn't there. Of course she wasn't. I sat by the window anyway, half hoping she'd walk in, half hoping she wouldn't. When the waiter brought my drink, I realized he'd made it wrong, too much milk, not enough sugar. Her way. I drank it anyway. Outside, a bus passed, throwing shadows across the glass. For a second, her reflection appeared, or maybe just someone who looked like her. Hair loose, coat open, walking quickly. I blinked, and she was gone. I pulled out my phone again, typed something without thinking. I don't need therapy. I just miss talking to you. I stared at it until my thumb hovered over send. Then I locked the screen instead. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It happened months later. The city had started to warm again, that quiet stretch between winter's retreat and summer's impatience. I saw her outside the library one evening, sitting on the steps with a paper cup and a book she wasn't reading. She looked smaller somehow, like she'd been learning how to live at half volume. She noticed me before I could decide whether to turn away. Her face flickered, recognition, hesitation, then something like relief. You look different, she said. So do you. We both laughed softly, like people testing the air before stepping back into a room they'd once ruined. We walked to the park again. The same bench, cleaner now, sunlight sliding through the trees. No rain this time, just the soft hum of the world pretending not to listen. I'm not your therapist anymore, she said after a while. You know that, right? I figured. Good. Then this isn't unethical. Her voice trembled on the last word. She took a slow sip from her cup, hands steady only because she made them be. I saw you once, I said quietly. At the store. With your son. She froze. You weren't supposed to. I know. She sighed, not in guilt, just in exhaustion. He doesn't know about any of this. About you. There isn't much to know, I said. That's not true. She turned toward me. There it was again, that unspoken, careful honesty we'd both built and broken. I kept my distance because I didn't trust myself, she admitted. Not because of you. Because of what it would mean if I did. I looked at her, the faint lines near her eyes, the shadow of the woman who'd once tried to stay neutral and failed. You make it sound like feeling something is a crime, I said. She smiled faintly. Sometimes it is. When you've promised too many people you won't. The light shifted, catching the edge of her hair. I wanted to say everything I hadn't, that she was the only person who'd ever made silence feel safe, that I didn't care about age or rules or right timing. But I didn't. I just said, I missed talking to you. Her eyes softened. You still can. Like this? Like this, she repeated, nodding slowly. There was a long pause. She reached out, not to hold my hand, not even to touch, just to rest her fingers near mine on the bench. The space between us felt deliberate, chosen. You'll be okay, she whispered. You already were before me. I smiled, even though it stung. You too. She looked at me one last time, steady, kind, unguarded. Then she stood, brushing her coat. Maybe next time, we won't need words. I nodded. Maybe. We didn't say goodbye. Just okay. And for once, it felt like enough. A year later, everything had settled. Not in the dramatic, life-changing way people talk about in movies, just in the quiet rearranging that happens when you stop expecting things to return to how they were. I still went to the same cafe. The tables were freshly painted now, the jazz still slightly off-tempo. I came most mornings at 8:47 a.m., though I couldn't have said why. Maybe habit. Maybe memory. I wrote again, short pieces, half poems, half thoughts. None of them about her directly, but all of them carried her fingerprints. The way she spoke in careful pauses, how she folded her napkin when thinking. The sound of her laugh that day at the park when she finally stopped pretending not to care. Sometimes I caught myself checking the door when it opened. Not expecting her, just remembering that she had once walked through it. One morning, she did. No fanfare, no music, just her, hair tied loosely, holding 2 cups. She looked rested. Lighter. For a second, we just stood there, both smiling without trying to. I guessed your order, she said, setting 1 cup down. Still black? I asked. She nodded. Still too bitter. I took a sip and winced. Still perfect. We sat by the window, same spot as before, same uneven light through the glass. Time hadn't erased the space between us, but it had softened it. I read something you wrote, she said. You sent it to that magazine, didn't you? Yeah. It sounded like peace. That's new for me. She smiled. It suits you. Outside, the city moved like background noise, buses, laughter, someone rushing for a train. Inside, it was just us, talking about nothing and everything. Books, recipes, the weather. No therapy, no rules, no unsent messages. When she laughed, it didn't sound like restraint anymore. After a while, she said quietly, "Do you ever think about that day? The park? Sometimes. And I think we did the right thing." She looked at me then, not to challenge, not to remember, just to agree. Me too, she said. We finished our drinks in silence. The clock above the counter ticked, steady, unhurried. As she stood to leave, she rested her hand lightly on mine. Not the trembling kind of touch from before, just a soft, steady reminder that we'd both made it through. "I make tea at night again," she said, smiling. "For me this time." I nodded. "And I finally stopped rewriting everything I said to you." "Progress," she whispered. "Peace," I said. She paused at the door, sunlight catching her hair just like that first morning. "I'll see you around," she said. "I know." And somehow, that was enough. Later, I wrote one line on a napkin and left it on the table. Some people don't leave. They just learn quieter ways to stay. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?